like, you're so different than the quote normal musical theater person. It could be really good for you. But I decided let's stay in Hawaii, and I didn't do it. Of course. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
So then, but I went back for graduation to walk, to do the whole ceremony. And I was like, I think I got to get out of here again. I'd sort of developed this love-hate relationship with New York. And I remember telling my clowning teacher at the time, my clown's name is Bert. Yes, my inner clown name is Bert, still is to this day. Jimmy says he operates me.
I was a clown when I first moved to LA for kids parties. It's not quite the same level as you, but, but we've both been clowns, so we have that in common.
I definitely have some employment stories about clowning, and yeah.
Not a happy time in my life.
Yeah. Rough, driving to like Riverside in like a bunny outfit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For kids who like already know all the tricks, you're like, oh, anyway. Whatever.
Yeah, I had a parent get mad at me because I was supposed to be a witch, and I had like my wig like wasn't dark enough or something, or I don't know. And I was like, all right, I quit.
You're like, lady, do you understand what I've gone through to get to your crappy party?
And I already changed costumes 3 times. I was like a gremlin before this, But
yes. Oh my God. Okay, we've both done it.
Yeah.
Okay,
so my clowning teacher says, just take Bert on a walk around the world and come back. And I'm like, yeah, totally. That's what I'm going to do. So, well, Bert just kept walking, and Bert just kept walking. I mean, with the intention, I think I really had the intentions of coming back. And this is where this like sort of like bittersweetness, I think, is like, has been in my heart for a long time about this particular thing, is I think my plan was always to become bi-coastal, And then, but as Bert kept walking, I think I like let go of that dream without being so conscious about it. And so I left New York. I ended up, ironically, I got booked for Shakespeare in the Park in Austin.
Cool.
So I was like, okay, I'll go. Yeah, it was cool. It was like my first paid gig out of college. And I was debating either doing that or leading adventure tours like around the US. And I was like, I can always lead the adventure tours. There was always like this desire to start like an adventure company, which, might not be off the table.
You're a very adventurous person, I feel like.
Yeah. Tomahawk tours. But next project. Socially distancing tours. Okay, actually it's gonna get even more interesting because I don't know if you know this. So I do the Shakespeare in the Park, and then I start doing stand-up in Austin, because Austin has a pretty great stand-up scene. Yeah, I like auditioned for this HBO thing, and then like it was something about my ending line was about like shitting in my pants, and my number was 99, and they're like, thank you, number 99.
Yeah.
And just as I was like, can I shit in my pants or something? I don't know. It was always raunchy. But my next plan was to leave Austin. I was like, I'm going to do the show, and I'm going to get out of there, and I'm going to move to San Francisco. And why San Francisco? Because I thought it was like the arty liaison between New York and LA, that I would somehow slowly make my way to LA. Like that was still the plan, but I needed to go the arty experimental route. Cause in my mind, like LA was like, boobs and mainstream.
Yeah.
Yeah. To Hollywood.
And San Francisco really was kind of a liaison for a while there before it got so expensive. I mean, I think.
Definitely. I mean, I met like my mentors and stuff there. So, but here's the thing you probably don't know. A lot of people don't know this. I forget about this too. So I admit, I was always like of the like, can I cuss? I can cuss on this thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I was always like of the fuck buddy mentality, right? I wasn't like really a relationship person. I was like, in my mind, I was like, oh, I should try having a boyfriend. So I tried having a boyfriend, when I was doing the Shakespeare thing or whatever, maybe like after that. And I don't really know what happened. Maybe I was like brainwashed or something, but I was my plan was to move to San Francisco, and he's like, well, I need to move to Miami to go to chef school. You should come with me. I'm like, not happening, dude. We're going to split up, dude. That's it. I was going to say it was a good run. And so then we're on a plane. I was like, well, I'll go to Miami with you and like check out the school just for fun, whatever, like let's have a trip. He asked me to marry him on the plane, and I said yes. Yeah. I said yes. And then we landed. Obviously, this is pre-cell phones. And we landed, and he's like, how come you're not like calling anybody and telling them, the news?
We're getting married.
I was like, I don't know. I just want to, get used to myself before I spread the news. I mean, clearly like one foot was already out the door. And then I told him later, I was like, maybe we should just go back to being boyfriend, girlfriend. And, and then it was going to like, and then he was like, I don't want to, it's over. Okay. He was so wrong for me. He was like, just so wrong. Not even like astrologically he was wrong. And Not that I put that much weight into that, but he was. Yeah, just like, jealous. I was like in an improv group and like he would get jealous if I had like a romantic relationship in an improvised scene. So he would show up and I'd try to protect him and I'd be like, this guy's my grandpa. Here's my little son. Here's my kid brother. It was like, all right. And whatever. Clearly that ended. That was 1 year.
If someone interferes with your art, it's like, they got to go. It doesn't work. It's not going to work.
So I learned some great boundaries at a young age. I was 23. I was married for 1 year. Although I was technically legally, I was married much longer than that because it took a while to get a divorce because we were in different states. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you got to get that first one out of the way, right?
Yeah.
It's terrible to think like that, but
whatever. I learned.
You learn something going through that. Divorce isn't fun. Even when you want to get divorced, it's not fun.
Yeah. So.
All right.
Okay.
So we got through the first marriage.
Got through the first marriage.
The only marriage.
The only marriage. Yeah. I mean, technically I'm married to Jimbo, but common law. Then what happened? Yeah, I left. I'd gone. Oh, meanwhile, when I was still with that dude, I went on like a road trip with a buddy and we did the western half of the U.S. and the whole premise was to shoot a documentary of ourselves performing in spontaneous situations. So we shot it on VHS-C. We shot
That's amazing. You're like the first reality show.
Yeah, it's never been put together, which I told her we should. But we would just make up situations. Like we went into a bar in like Broadus, Montana and said we were working for MTV studying Western fashion. And we had all these cowboys like reciting poetry. I mean, I got to go through this footage. But
yeah, you do.
I know. So yeah, did that, then moved to San Francisco and was in San Francisco for 5 years. Oh, I forgot to say this. The dude moved with me to San Francisco. The husband.
Were you guys still married?
That was during that year we were together.
Oh, okay.
But
do you even know, have you ever seen him since or like heard from him since? Really?
No.
Or do you know what he's up to?
I don't think so.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay, so you and this guy, like you go to
I remember his name. But
okay.
Yeah. And then because he had moved with me and I was just, this is what's happening. As I was out there, I don't know, I was doing improv stuff, sketches. And then, I somehow found this vocal coach who I loved, who was like a drag queen and opera singer. And I really realized this. I've realized this lately, like filling out grant applications and stuff. When they ask, what are your influences? I realize how influenced I am by drag performance. It's costumes, it's music. It's usually like accentuating some flaw in some theatrical, whimsical, campy way, which I love. So I think I was exposed to it first in New York by going to shows, but it wasn't until I got intimately involved in it was in San Francisco just by having close people involved in it. So this guy became my mentor. And that led into him not only being my vocal coach, but obviously a very close friend. And then we started making stuff together, making like the merge of theater and music. And that's where that started happening for me, was there. Yeah, that's where that really started coming together. And I would be in their shows and his partner's shows. His partner I now work for here for the acting studio, Zach Barnett Studios. So,
cool.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then,
your live show is such a marriage of theater and like performance. And I mean, for people who haven't seen you perform, I saw you in Joshua Tree at this outdoor show, and you have a song and you put out it's like a birth canal thing. And then you had the whole audience crawling through it and like being reborn as you're playing this like electronics on. It was one of the wildest things I've ever seen in my life, and everybody was totally into it. It's really incredible how you were able to command the crowd like that, because a lesser performer would do that and no one would participate. But even if no one did, I have a feeling you would still make it work and make it hilarious or make it entertaining,
Well, let me just tell you, crowds in LA are not as participatory.
Open to being reborn.
Exactly. Like it takes a little more caressing. And there's been many times where I'm just like, is anybody going to crawl to this thing? But then usually when that happens, it turns into a caterpillar. I've never rehearsed it. It happened like organically live where I crawled into it and then I stood up. So it was like this caterpillar and I was coming out of it.
Oh, wow.
Wow. But imagine doing the tunnel now in COVID times. I mean, obviously no live concerts are happening.
Tunneling for a while.
But no tunneling for a while.
Yeah, that's a bummer because that was incredible. But I also just think that when you're on stage, it's like it's so rare to see a performer who is completely fearless. Like I have a feeling it wouldn't matter what the heck happened. You just would know how to deal with it. And that is very rare. And it's so exciting to see when you see it because it's like seeing someone be so free. It's exciting. And I mean, I often think about your live show. I'm just like, wow, like that's goals, #goals.
Oh, thanks. I mean,
yeah, but so it all starts there really, huh? And then how do you get to LA?
Yeah. Fast forward. Let's see. I left San Francisco for 10 months to travel in Central America by myself. And I'll make this short because it's a whole other story, but I flew into Mexico City and I made my way to the Darien Gap of Panama via bus, via hitchhiking, some stories that I'm surprised I'm alive. Cause this was really like pre-internet. I mean, I'd go to the internet cafes and check in, but, it says all books, maps. Wow. And, made my way down and I had all kinds of crazy adventures, but it then inspired a rock opera. So I was like, I'm going to write this rock opera, but I also didn't want it to be so like, lots of times when you see like sort of autobiographical stuff, because I'd been through the one woman show phase. I forgot to mention this. I did this in San Francisco. I wrote a bunch of one woman shows. Like I went through that phase of it being semi autobiographical, but I think all performers, we have to go through that phase where I need to whatever. And then you're like, okay, cool. Done. I don't need to hear every detail about your life. Yeah. Did it. So I wanted to write inspired by this trip thing. So it's very bizarre. It was like, I wrote the story. It was called El Camino Loco, the crazy road. And it was about this homeless woman, because I lived in San Francisco, so it was obviously very much around the homeless population a lot. It was about this homeless woman that had these big dreams. And in these big dreams, she was this rock and roll star. And so in this live version, I did it at the San Francisco Fringe Festival and actually got Best Rock Opera. Every time she'd be doing these grandiose performances with this band. And those performances involved sort of like retelling of this journey she'd had in Central America. But it was very abstract. There was like, I had fallen in love with this like river guide, like for real. And, I had this total rendezvous with this Kiwi rafting river guy adventure man. But the way I sort of personified him as a show, I ran out this gorilla suit and he was like the river creature. Yeah. And, it was bizarre. And all my band members,
dream imagery,
dreaming. Yeah. And all my band members wore these like orange old school life vests that I had just acquired from a friend from us going tubing a lot, which we will use tomorrow on our tubing trip and our camping trip.
You still have them. How nice. I love that they serve multiple purposes.
Listen, if you need any props or costumes, that's like my retirement. I'll be like this old lady in like Nicaragua selling have a costume shop. Yeah. Yeah. And then when Coca La Loca, when she would turn around on the street and look at her band, nothing was there. So it was like this whole, reality and kind of exploring some like mental health things with homelessness, kind of dabbing in that. I mean, if I had revisited it, I think I would have really gotten probably into that more. But, so then that was like sort of one of the last things I did a fairy tale rock and roll thing after that in San Francisco. Then that led to me being obsessed with like fairy tales and rock and roll. And then that's when I started that band Cinderella Motel when I moved to LA. But when I first moved to LA, it was all about me trying to get into the acting business. And, I had moved down with my buddy and he went on that path. He went on that path big time. I was sending out my headshots and resumes, but just nothing was really like clicking.
It's so hard.
And I was like, well, this is boring. I can make my own shit. So then I started looking for band members and I started with one drummer and then it kept morphing and it was all, and then that Tomahawk character I created started to come about.
Do these characters just sort of happen? Like they just kind of bubble up and they present themselves to you, or how does that happen? Because it seems like you've had a lot of different characters that have come up for you. I'm so curious.
It's a lot of things living in here. Well, the Tammy Tomahawk thing came up because I was at a rodeo weekend wedding. Try saying that. Rodeo weekend wedding. And me and my friends were in charge of the costume, like the photo booth thing. And we were messing around with the costumes before people showed up. And I put on some headdress and my friend's like, what's your name? And I was like, Tammy Tomahawk. Like it just came out. And then that's what everybody called me that weekend. Then I got a Gmail address like that. And then I was like, that's my stage name. So for a long time in LA, Tammy Tomahawk was a musician and Kym Priess